I invited everyone to a nice dinner for my birthday. My sister laughed and said, "No one cares, it's just you." They all canceled at the last minute. I didn't argue. I just stood up, paid the bill, and texted one line. "Let's see how you celebrate without a mortgage." By morning, every payment was terminated and every voicemail started with "please." I, 32M, never thought my birthday would be the day I learned exactly where I stood with my family. But sometimes life has a way of serving you clarity on a silver platter, even when you didn't order it. It started 3 weeks ago when I decided to do something nice for my birthday. After years of quiet celebrations, I wanted to gather everyone I cared about for dinner at Romano's, this upscale Italian place downtown. Nothing fancy, just good food and better company. I sent out the invitations personally, calling each family member to make sure they could make it. My sister was the first to respond, and her enthusiasm felt genuine. She told me it sounded wonderful and that she'd been looking forward to spending time together. My parents seemed equally pleased, mentioning how nice it would be to have the whole family together. My brother confirmed he'd be there, and even my aunt said she wouldn't miss it for the world. I made the reservation for 8 people, including myself and my girlfriend. The restaurant required a deposit for large parties, which I paid without hesitation. I was genuinely excited about the evening, picturing all of us around the table, laughing and creating memories. The day before my birthday, I sent a reminder text to the group chat, confirming the time and location. Everyone responded with thumbs-up emojis and affirmative messages. I went to bed that night feeling good about the celebration ahead. My birthday arrived on a Saturday. I spent the morning with my girlfriend, enjoying a quiet breakfast before she had to leave for her work conference. She apologized again for missing dinner, explaining that the timing was unavoidable. I understood completely and told her we'd celebrate together when she returned. The reservation was for 7 p.m. At 5:30, I was getting ready when my phone buzzed with a text from my sister. She said she couldn't make it anymore because something had come up with her kids. The message felt abrupt, lacking the apologetic tone I would have expected. Before I could respond, my brother texted saying he had decided to attend a friend's party instead. My parents followed with their own cancellation, claiming they were too tired to go out. Within 15 minutes, everyone had canceled. My aunt was the last, mentioning a sudden headache that prevented her from driving. I stared at my phone, reading through the messages again. The timing felt too convenient, too coordinated. I tried calling my sister to understand what had really happened, but she didn't answer. My brother's phone went straight to voicemail. Despite the cancellations, I decided to honor the reservation. I had paid the deposit, and the restaurant was expecting me. I drove to Romano's alone, feeling a mixture of disappointment and confusion. The hostess greeted me warmly and asked about the rest of my party. I explained that there had been some last-minute changes and that I would be dining alone. She seemed sympathetic and offered to move me to a smaller table, but I asked to keep the original reservation. I wanted to sit at that large table and really absorb what had just happened. I ordered the meal I had been looking forward to sharing. The food was excellent, but eating alone at a table set for 8 felt surreal. Other diners occasionally glanced my way, probably wondering about the empty chairs surrounding me. Halfway through my meal, I saw my sister walk into the restaurant. But she wasn't alone, and she wasn't there to join me. She was with her husband and kids, along with my brother and his girlfriend. They were being seated at a table across the room. I watched as they settled in, laughing and chatting as if nothing unusual had happened. My sister caught sight of me and her expression changed briefly, but she quickly looked away and continued her conversation. I finished my meal methodically, trying to process what I was witnessing. They had all canceled on me to have dinner together without me. The realization hit differently than I expected. It wasn't just disappointment anymore. It was something colder. When the server brought my check, I noticed my sister approaching my table. She looked uncomfortable, but was trying to maintain a casual demeanor. She mentioned how coincidental it was to run into me there, as if her presence was completely unplanned. I asked her directly why everyone had really canceled on me. She seemed taken aback by my directness, but quickly recovered. She told me not to take it personally, that sometimes plans just don't work out. Then she said something that crystallized everything for me. She laughed and said that no one really cares about these things, that it was just me making a big deal out of nothing. The words hung in the air between us. Just me. as if wanting to celebrate my birthday with family was somehow pathetic or unreasonable. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice or make a scene. I simply nodded, stood up, and walked to the front to pay my bill. The server was apologetic about the situation, having clearly witnessed the awkwardness. I left a generous tip and walked out of the restaurant. In my car, I sat for a moment before pulling out my phone. I sent one text to the family group chat. Let's see how you celebrate without a mortgage. The message was sent before I could second-guess myself. I drove home in silence, my mind surprisingly clear about what needed to happen next. You see, what my family didn't know was that I had been quietly helping all of them financially for years. It started small, with my parents. When my father lost his job 3 years ago, I had stepped in to help with their mortgage payments. What began as temporary assistance had become a permanent arrangement. They never asked me to stop, and I never offered to. My sister had been struggling since her divorce 2 years ago. Her ex-husband had left her with significant debt and inconsistent child support. I had been covering her mortgage and car payments, telling her it was temporary until she got back on her feet. She had found full-time work 6 months ago, but had never mentioned taking over the payments again. My brother was the most expensive. He had started a business that was perpetually on the verge of success, always needing just one more injection of capital. I had been funding his office rent, equipment leases, and even his personal expenses while he focused on growth. My aunt was the only exception. She was financially stable and had never asked for help. But she was also the closest to the rest of them, often acting as a mediator in family disputes. That night, I spent several hours on my laptop, accessing the various accounts and automatic payments I had set up over the years. Each cancellation required a few clicks. Mortgage payments, car loans, business expenses, insurance premiums. I methodically terminated every financial support system I had created. I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt liberated. Update 1. By Sunday morning, my phone was buzzing constantly. The first call came from my sister at 6 a.m. She was panicking because her automatic mortgage payment had been declined, and she was facing immediate late fees. She asked if there had been some kind of error with the bank transfer. I explained calmly that there was no error. I had simply stopped making her payments, effective immediately. She seemed confused at first, as if she couldn't connect my decision to the events of the previous night. My brother called an hour later with similar concerns about his business accounts. His tone was different from my sister's, more demanding than confused. He wanted to know what kind of game I was playing and insisted that I restore the payments immediately. I told him the same thing I had told my sister. The game was over. My parents called together, with my mother on speakerphone. They were more diplomatic in their approach, acknowledging that they had handled my birthday poorly, but suggesting that my response was disproportionate. They reminded me that family forgives family, and that financial support shouldn't be conditional on perfect behavior. I asked them if their attendance at my birthday dinner had been conditional on their mood or better offers. The line went quiet. Throughout the day, the calls and texts continued. My family was experiencing the immediate stress of sudden financial responsibility, and their messages reflected a growing desperation. Late fees were accumulating, and some automatic payments were creating overdrafts in accounts that had been running close to zero. My aunt called in the evening, positioning herself as a neutral party trying to help resolve the family conflict. She suggested that everyone meet to discuss the situation like adults. She mentioned that while she understood my hurt feelings, I was potentially ruining people's credit and putting them at risk of losing their homes. I appreciated her measured approach, but I explained that my decision wasn't about hurt feelings. It was about recognizing reality. My family had shown me exactly how much they valued our relationship, and I was simply aligning my actions with their priorities. Update 2. Monday brought a new level of urgency to their communications. My sister left 3 voicemails before noon, each one more frantic than the last. She had spoken with her mortgage company and learned that a missed payment would immediately trigger penalty interest rates and potential foreclosure proceedings. She tried a different approach in her 4th call, becoming emotional and mentioning how her children would be affected. She reminded me of how close we had been growing up and questioned whether I really wanted to punish innocent kids for adult problems. I found her appeal interesting, considering she had never expressed concern about how her actions might affect my feelings. But I didn't engage with the emotional manipulation. I simply told her that her children's welfare was her responsibility, not mine. My brother's response was more aggressive. He showed up at my office that afternoon, demanding to speak with me privately. He was angry and accusatory, claiming that I was being vindictive and childish. He insisted that business support wasn't the same as personal gifts, and that I was potentially destroying years of his hard work. I asked him if he had a contract or legal agreement that guaranteed my continued funding. He didn't. I asked him if he had ever expressed gratitude for the support or acknowledged it as anything more than an entitlement. He couldn't answer. When he realized that anger wasn't working, he switched to pleading. He explained how close his business was to profitability, how much he had sacrificed to build it, and how devastating it would be to lose everything now. I listened patiently and then asked him why he hadn't considered these consequences before choosing his friend's party over my birthday dinner. He stammered that the two things weren't related, that business support shouldn't depend on social obligations. I disagreed. Everything was related. Support systems are built on relationships, and relationships require mutual respect and consideration. He had shown me that our relationship wasn't worth honoring a simple dinner commitment. My parents took a different approach. They arrived at my apartment that evening with a homemade meal and humble attitudes. They apologized sincerely for their behavior and acknowledged that they had taken my generosity for granted. My mother explained that they had canceled because my father had been feeling unwell, but they hadn't wanted to worry me on my birthday. When they saw that everyone else was canceling, they decided to keep their real reason private. She admitted that they should have been honest from the beginning. Their explanation felt more genuine than the others, and I appreciated their willingness to take responsibility. But I explained that the pattern of behavior went beyond one evening. For years, they had accepted my financial support without question, never checking if I was comfortable with the arrangement or if my circumstances had changed. I told them that I needed time to evaluate all my relationships and determine what healthy boundaries looked like. In the meantime, they would need to resume responsibility for their own expenses. Update 3. By Tuesday, the situation had evolved beyond individual conversations. My aunt organized a family meeting at her house, insisting that everyone needed to address the conflict together. She positioned herself as the mediator and asked me to attend with an open mind. I agreed to the meeting, curious to see how they would approach the situation as a group. When I arrived, I found all of them waiting in her living room, their expressions ranging from sheepish to defiant. My aunt began by acknowledging that everyone had made mistakes, but she emphasized the importance of family unity and forgiveness. She suggested that we focus on solutions rather than blame and work together to repair the damaged relationships. My sister spoke first, offering a formal apology for her behavior at the restaurant. She admitted that seeing me alone at the table had made her feel ashamed, and that her comment about no one caring had been cruel and inaccurate. She promised it would never happen again. My brother was less forthcoming with accountability, but he did acknowledge that his approach had been insensitive. He explained that he had been dealing with stress about his business and hadn't given proper consideration to my feelings. My parents reiterated their apology from the previous evening and expressed their commitment to rebuilding trust. After everyone had spoken, my aunt asked if I was ready to restore the financial arrangements and move forward as a family. I thanked them all for their apologies, which seemed sincere enough. But I explained that apologies didn't automatically reset boundaries or restore trust. The financial support had ended not as punishment, but as a necessary correction to an unhealthy dynamic. For years, I had been giving freely without establishing any expectations or boundaries. This had created a situation where my generosity was taken for granted and my feelings were considered irrelevant. My birthday dinner had simply revealed what already existed. I told them that I was open to rebuilding our relationships, but it would need to happen gradually and on different terms. Any future financial assistance would be structured as formal loans with clear repayment terms, and only after they had demonstrated genuine effort to handle their own responsibilities. My sister asked how long she had to find alternative arrangements for her mortgage. I told her that she had already had 2 years to transition to independence, and that her timeline was now entirely her responsibility. My brother wanted to know if there was any way to save his business. I explained that his business should have been viable without my subsidies from the beginning, and that if it couldn't survive without constant external funding, it wasn't actually a business. The meeting ended without resolution, but with a clearer understanding of where everyone stood. Final update. 3 weeks have passed since my birthday dinner, and the dust has largely settled. The immediate crisis has forced everyone to confront realities they had been avoiding. My sister found a roommate to help with her mortgage payments and picked up a part-time weekend job. She's stressed but managing, and she seems more appreciative of the effort required to maintain her lifestyle. We've had coffee twice, and our conversations feel more balanced than they have in years. My brother's business didn't survive. He had to close the office and sell the equipment, but he found employment with a former competitor who appreciated his industry knowledge. He's earning less than he hoped, but he's also learning what sustainable employment looks like. He thanked me last week for forcing him to face reality, though it took him some time to reach that perspective. My parents struggled the most initially, but they qualified for assistance programs and have restructured their budget successfully. My father's health is actually better now that he's not carrying the stress of hidden financial dependence. They've started treating our relationship as equal rather than transactional. My aunt maintained her position as the family diplomat, and I respect her for it. She disagreed with my methods, but acknowledged that the results spoke for themselves. As for me, I celebrated my 33rd birthday last month with a small group of friends who showed up because they wanted to be there. My girlfriend organized a surprise dinner at my favorite restaurant, and everyone stayed until closing time. I learned something important about the difference between being family and acting like family. DNA creates obligation, but respect creates relationship. I'm still connected to all of them, but now it's by choice rather than guilt or habit. The financial freedom has been significant too. Without the constant drain of supporting multiple households, I've been able to focus on my own goals. I'm considering buying a larger place and maybe planning some travel. Most importantly, I sleep better knowing that my relationships are based on mutual appreciation rather than unspoken debts. That birthday dinner was the best money I never spent. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is stop enabling them to avoid reality. My family learned to stand on their own feet, and I learned the value of boundaries. We're all better for it.